Oh, absolutely. I'm in businesses all the time, creating improvisational cultures, doing workshops that last anywhere from a half a day to a full day to a day and a half to 2 days to 3 days to 1 week to once a week for 18 weeks in a row. And it's incredibly hard. I deal with pushback on a regular basis. My clients are, touch wood, but I've been very fortunate to work with very great clients and very high-ranking individuals who really have no problem telling you how much they make an hour and how much time they feel is wasted if they're not happy.
Well, thank you. All right.
This is absolutely something that's happened to me before. It's my, in my very early teaching career to business people, and I'm speaking around 2000, the year 2000. Somebody said that this was a waste of time, and it became a drive for me to make sure that it's not a waste of time and make sure that everyone understands why we love this thing so much and how they can use it in a practical way in the business world. So now I get to go into, I've worked with admirals, I've worked with generals, I've worked with tons of CEOs, tons of VPs, tons of boards, and all very, very impressive. I mean, admirals and generals are impressive by nature. And they have to be able to use this when it's done. Like I said, return on investment means something to them. And if I can't articulate why this is useful and how to use it and get them to understand that, then I fail. And frankly, I would do a disservice to the art of improvisation if I fail, then I will not fail for anyone.
I would imagine that there are also people, when you go out to businesses and organizations to do this, that I feel so validated, they probably break down and start crying sometimes. Because that's what their personality lends. That's where one of their gifts is, and it's been shut down for so long.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Keith Johnstone wrote a great book called Impro. And in the book Impro, there's a chapter on spontaneity, which talks about how children are naturally improvisational, naturally spontaneous. They can go out in the backyard and turn a stick into 10 different things and not even think twice about it. And then over time, we are taught not to behave this way, or there's a time and a place to behave specific ways. And for some people, it really does open up that childlike spirit again. And for others, and Bill, you mentioned this before in relation to dramatic improvisation, for others it becomes very cathartic.
Yes.
And it's a great work-life thing that I've been part of dozens and dozens of conversations in which adult men are crying because they're playing with their children for the first time, they feel like. And again, these are no joke as far as whatever status means in life. Individuals, they're high-ranking individuals who have realized they've been either ignoring or not really communicating with their prodigies, their lineage, their children.
Yeah, it's very healing.
Yeah. You have a 10 ways to create an improvisational workplace. It isn't just the yes and component. One thing is about it is you say to be explicit with your intent.
Oh, absolutely. Now we're bridging over to how to create this environment.
Yeah.
Leaders have to communicate. Have to communicate early, have to communicate often, and have to communicate clearly, and have to be consistent in their communication. And that sometimes means being vulnerable and being very clear with what you want. So saying why you're doing this, yes and, for example. Why are we going to use yes and? How are we going to use yes and? How long are we going to use yes and? To what end are we going to use yes and? What questions do you have using yes and? What can we do about those questions? And now let's do it. And if the team around them, they're people that that they're lower status of, the leader, his team, her team. If her team doesn't understand what the goal is with everything, then it's a great opportunity to create less buy-in. And if there's less buy-in, then there's less trust and support. And in any improv team, you need trust and support.
What I think is interesting about saying yes, I use it a lot in some of the work that Bill and I do here in Columbus with different nonprofit organizations, yes is the willingness to change. I tell people saying yes in a situation doesn't mean you're going to change, but at least you're willing. And I think that probably translates a lot for you, Bob, in business, is that, you know, people already want to say no, or we've tried that before, but yes is just a conversation. It's being willing to change when someone, you know, give them the time to speak, and being open. Really, improv is being open, and saying yes is being open to what could happen.
Absolutely, without question. Yes does not necessarily mean that you agree. Yes does not necessarily mean that you do it. Yes is listening to what's being said, being open to the possibility of discovery.
Right. And contribution. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
You said provide a mutually shared experience is another one, so I'm just telling everybody on the staff, we're going to have a party. But that is important to do things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. You can read about improvisation. In truth, though, nothing beats the experience of learning improvisation, not only in a classroom, also up on a stage.
Well,
the experience is a great teacher, and if you go through that together, you create a bond. Well,
the funny thing is, I know when we're teaching, sometimes you play some of these games, and they're really you're just improvising, and they're low stakes situations, and people get really emotional, and you want to say, well, think about it when you're back in business. I mean, you're upset about an improv game right now. You're worrying about, did you win? Did you listen? When it really matters, what are you going to do? I mean, guys, it's pretend right now. Like, chill out. People get really emotional. They're like, I won that round. Yeah. Okay, again, pretend.
I was wondering, Bob, if you don't come across that element, that super competitive. I want to show the boss how smart I am, so I won't get lost in the alphabet game.
Right, like I did. Yeah.
Well, as was mentioned before, failure is part of so much of life. You know, so there's a lot of insecurity that's attached to that type of aggression. With people being so competitive, you have to be willing to manipulate status. You cannot always be high status. You have to be low status sometimes. And you have to be willing to fail. I mean, if you're going to succeed at a high level, you have to learn how to fail. And if you're really so focused on being competitive, what that is a very self-centered thing to focus on. You're really not focusing on the ensemble, not on the team, the other members of the team, members of the team that need your support. And in a great improvisation team, the individuals inside of it really put the team at a higher level than any person. I mean, so much so, it always goes back to an old improv adage, which is, we sacrifice our own ideas to make the ideas of other people succeed.
Right.
I'm part of a great improvisation team called Baby Wants Candy. We do improvised musicals. I'm a founding member of that group, and there's no greater example of that than this group for me personally, because it's constantly supporting what somebody else is doing at the risk of losing your own thing. And in doing so, it really gets you to that next level. It's transcendent because it's never about you. It's about this whole thing that we're all doing together.
Bob Kulhan, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. And have a great time at your festival, Barbara.
Thanks, Bob.
I wish I could be there.
Come next year, Bob.
Next year.
We'll be in touch.
Bob Kulhan, he's a teacher at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business, yay, and is CEO of Business Improvisations. Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation about improvisation with a performer and teacher from Chicago who's going to join us on the phone. We'll be right back. This is All Sides with Ann Fisher on 89.7 NPR News.